Hello and welcome to this broadcast of Running on Love with God. My name is Lori Michelle and I'm broadcasting from Israel, and I'm here with my friend Anna Marie, who's in Chicago. Hello, Anna Marie. And this program, if you've been watching, is a program where I share the wisdom of God himself. You see, I was awakened in April of 2009 to the voice of Hashem God, and I hear him in plain English. And it's my life purpose to share his wisdom and help us all learn what he expects from us and help us to get it right. As our world, as it is now heading into chaos, it's clear that we need his help more than ever. Tonight's program is about the events that have taken place in Charlottesville on August 12th. And the name of the program is, Why is America Having a Breakdown? Who caused the horror in Charlottesville? And what can we learn from this? It's a very important topic because we see protests and violence happening all over America and around the world. And we need to get familiar with God's laws so we can understand what he expects from us in order to fix our problems. Our laws need to be based on God's laws. And I posted a short video Q&A asking the question, what caused the violence in Charlottesville? And the answer I gave was the Founding Fathers. It's kind of a shocking answer, really, because the Founding Fathers are revered by Americans, and I've revered them my whole life. And they gave us something called the freedom of speech, which we value, and we should value. However, is it a law or a right that God gives us? And in my video, I answered that question, that God doesn't give us freedom of speech. As a matter of fact, he has laws about speech, and he has laws regarding evil speech. And in the Torah, there's a famous example of Miriam speaking evil about her brother Moses and being stricken with leprosy. So this gives you an idea of how important speech is to Hashem God. When we go against God's laws, inevitably we fall down a slippery slope and fall into moral decay and have problems. And we are experiencing these problems all over the world. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Anna Marie, and ask me questions, because this is a very important topic.
If free speech is not allowed under God's laws, then who's to decide what is evil speak and what is not? Can't I just say anybody who disagrees with me is speaking evil?
No. First of all, let me say that God gives us the ultimate freedom, complete freedom to choose evil or good in every moment. That's part of his design. But he has laws that govern us. And the laws were given to us by God himself on Mount Sinai. He gave those laws to Moses. And in those laws, there are laws that govern our speech. So you can't give someone a loaded gun called free speech and anything goes. What happened in Charlottesville was that one group had a permit to be there, and they were spewing hatred and vulgarity. They were white supremacists, KKK, and it incited others to show up and protest. And not just protest, but the others who showed up with weapons, bricks, mace, pepper spray, and they were looking for a fight, and they sure got one. It resulted in someone driving his car into people and killing and murdering a young woman. So we have to examine, what is free speech? What is our unalienable rights that the Founding Fathers spoke of? They got a lot of things right. We are free. We are free people, but we need to be governed by laws. And my assertion on this program is that our laws need to be derived from God's laws. not from man's desires to have anything they want. The pursuit of happiness.
In your introduction, you asked, how did this breakdown occur and who is responsible for the chaos? Do we need to pick sides? Doesn't it matter more that we do something to prevent the chaos in the future? Or should we talk about who's responsible?
Well, we always need to know what the source is, where the source of our problems are. And if someone is responsible, we need to know who's responsible. More importantly, the people who are responsible for participating in this madness need to wake up and understand that that's exactly what they're doing and go inward and correct the problems within themselves. That's what this program's about. That's what this work is for. And that's what my calling is to bring to people's attention that they are slipping and falling and choosing evil without realizing it. They're choosing behaviors that are going against God. And everybody is responsible for the chaos, confusion, and the problems that we're seeing all over the world.
You later asked, or you stated, moral and decent Americans watch these events in horror and wonder, where is God?
Yes. God is everywhere. As astounding and as amazing and hard to believe as that is for some people, He is here. He speaks to me 24/7. He's always there speaking to me. But He's there with you, and He's there with whomever's listening to this program. It's not comprehensible to us as human beings, but He's aware of everything in the world. There is nothing that He does not know. So where is God? God is everywhere, and God is holding us accountable. Where it looks like the evildoers are getting away with whatever they're doing, they are not. We are held accountable for every action and every utterance that comes out of our mouth.
You said we will discuss and unravel the mess one issue at a time. What are the different issues that are going on here?
Well, I looked up a few things before this program, and one of the things I looked up, we are aware that idol worship is against God's laws, right?
Yes.
Well, I went to a website called Chabad.org, which is a religious Jewish website, and I read something that I'd like to read now, and it says in the Torah, "You shall not make idols for yourselves, nor shall you set up a statue or a monument for yourselves." Isn't that interesting? God's laws. "And in your land you shall not place a pavement stone on which to prostrate yourselves, for I am the Lord your God." Idol worship is a direct sin against God. But it goes further in that statement and says that creating a statue or monument is against God. So the very statue of Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee.
Yeah, I mess up his name sometimes. I don't know. I mix him up with Ulysses Grant or something. Anyway, a big mix-up because he was a Confederate general fighting for slavery, and they created a monument to honor him as though he was immortal and somebody to worship. Am I exaggerating? Do you think, Anna Marie?
Well, isn't it just recording history? And wasn't he a good leader, even though we don't support his cause?
Wasn't he a what? A good leader? Good leader. Hashem says no. He wants me to explain that he in particular was a poor representative of the United States of America. I read in a New York Times article about him that he was someone who defended and worked for keeping slavery as a way of life in America. That's what, there was some equivocation in whether he was for or against slavery, but he spoke about keeping slavery for another 5 years beyond when someone would let their slaves go. He wanted to keep them for 5 more years, something about that in the article. In particular, he had a father-in-law who owned slaves, and upon his death, his father-in-law said that he wanted to free his slaves, and Robert E. Lee fought that decision and wanted those slaves to stay and remain slaves for 5 more years. And a few of his slaves tried to break free and escape, and they were caught. And Robert E. Lee commanded that they would be stripped to the waist and beaten, lashes. So is this the kind of human being that we want to immortalize and have a monument for in public in the United States? Is this what we stand for as Americans?
No.
No. And so Donald Trump made some statements that he took a lot of heat for. Let's talk about those statements. He said, well, what are we going to do? He's part of history. And if you take his monument down, well, then you should take down George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, who also owned slaves. But it's beyond that. Look at what this man stood for. Look what he did. If it's true, it was in the New York Times. A lot of people have a lot of issues with the New York Times. I hope they fact checked, so I'm repeating what I read in the paper. But even still, he was a Confederate general fighting for the Confederacy, which was trying to protect slavery.
Right.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So that's not a right that should have been protected. It should have been abolished. Gratefully, it was. And we shouldn't immortalize those who fought to keep slavery in place. Besides that, I just read from the Torah itself that creating a monument or statue is against God. What are we doing when we create a statue or a monument of a person? We're idealizing them. We're making them immortal. We're making them something greater than ourselves. And once you give power to another human being like that, we make ourselves slaves. But it's even worse than that. We put them on a status of God. And that's blasphemy. It's against God's laws.
But what if it's a work of art, such as Michelangelo's David?
That's a good example, because David was King David, the Star of David, the beloved. Hashem God loved David. But he said it was still incorrect to create a statue of David. Against his laws. You see, his laws are not for him. He doesn't worry about competition, Hashem. He has no competition. He's not worried about that. He gave us laws to protect us from ourselves and making David a god.
Okay, so what about a painting? Like what of all of Michelangelo's paintings of different people? Is that wrong as well?
Paintings are fine. I have pictures on my walls of my family. Paintings are fine. But a painting, for example, of Robert E. Lee hanging in a government office of the United States is symbolic of someone who fought for slavery. And I would protest that. I wouldn't support that. Would you? I don't know. You know, there are a lot of people who are fighting and arguing that he's okay. He was part of history and we should revere him. And they want to protect the Confederate flag. There's a lot of people who don't want to see that flag hanging anywhere in America because of what it symbolizes.
But the other side is we don't want to whitewash our history either and not let people see how divisive things have been in our past.
Okay, so Nazi Germany is part of our history. Does that mean that we should have SWAT stickers hanging around the United States of America or anywhere in the world? Look what that represents.
No, but
it's disgusting.
We should teach about what happened so that people know that it can happen.
Absolutely. Education is the cure. But we don't need to allow people to wear visibly a SWAT sticker or make a monument to Adolf Hitler and put it in Washington, D.C. Do we?
No.
A human monster? Excuse me? Am I speaking strongly enough? And this is the kind of language, by the way, that should be used when you're protesting. Speak strongly, say what you need to say, but don't show up with bricks and pepper spray and looking for a physical fight and cursing out your opponent. It's not about you against the white supremacists. It's about morality against evil. Stand for morality and godliness and show people what godliness looks like and condemn the behavior and the speech of those who are haters. Don't stoop down to their level.
Okay, so it wouldn't be right to just ignore it. And if somebody's planning a protest that you disagree with, you should participate, but you should participate peacefully rather than just ignore the people that you don't agree with.
Follow the example of Martin Luther King. Look how much that man accomplished. He was beautiful, and I don't recall, and maybe I'm wrong, because I'm not a history buff, but I don't recall him being quoted as being derisive or violent. His protests and his marches were peaceful, about love and God and connection.
Right, and it was the people who were against him that brought the violence into it. I don't think the violence ever originated.
Yes.
On his end.
Exactly.
All right, well, then I have a final question, is there anything else you want to cover, or should I go right to my question?
Well, we can go to the final question, but I do want to talk about anger a little bit before we end the program.
Okay, well, wait, that'll fit into my final question.
Oh, okay.
Which was, can you give any...
We think alike. There we go.
Can you give any advice on how to end a conversation with someone who wants to rant on one side or another on divisive issues? So that goes to the anger question too, because if someone is so angry that they want to convince you about their opinion and their side and their right, what can you do on the other end?
Well, when someone's angry and derisive in their need to be right, you have to wonder why. If you get louder and nastier, does it make you more right? I would just look at them quizzically, and I might walk away because I don't need to be right. If I can have an intellectual debate with someone and discuss the issues and get somewhere, then we can discuss something. But when you hear voices rising and getting louder and louder and angry, like you're seeing at these protests, what's their point? Are they going to beat you into submission? If they're nasty and loud enough, are you going to agree with them? Or do you want to have a real debate about issues? Stop making it so personal. It's not about me or you. It's about right and wrong and evil versus good. And stand and be the model for good. If you start being derisive and nasty and showing up with weapons, are you any better than the evil KKK and white supremacists? No, you're not. Absolutely not. You're breaking the law. So I do agree with, by the way, Donald Trump, that both sides were culpable. Is one side more culpable than the other? Yeah, I think so. I think the white supremacists and KKK who are spewing their hatred and their evil should go to jail, frankly. I think that should be against the law. But that brings up the premise of this whole program. The founding fathers should not have given carte blanche to freedom of speech, and those people should not have had a permit to speak the way they were speaking. It was a loaded gun. And look what happened. Someone died. We have to look at everyone and each party and decide where is the blame and take the blame. We have to be willing to accept some of it on ourselves because we can't cure anything if we can decode it and point fingers elsewhere. One more thing about anger, though, and then we'll wrap up, is give your anger to Hashem God. I have a great story to share about that. I was at a happy celebration just recently, very joyous celebration, and a woman sitting next to me said something to me that was narcissistic and nasty, very evil. And I couldn't even believe that this was being said to me at such a joyous occasion. And I didn't even know what the purpose was. Was it to bring me down so that I shouldn't enjoy this event? And I felt my blood pressure rising. And just in that moment, Hashem God said to me in the most calm and stern voice, he said, "Lori, let it go, honey. I'm more angry than you. I see it all. I know what she just did. Give it to me and enjoy the day." And in that moment, it just took my pressure right down. And I realized we're all accountable. And this woman was accountable. I didn't need to hold her accountable. Hashem God is going to hold her accountable. She's answerable for her nasty behavior. And so are those white supremacists and KKK and evildoers and the criminals in Barcelona. They're all accountable. You hide nothing from God. So if you're angry and you're incensed by these things that are happening, hold your anger and turn it over to Him and be the example of godliness that we need to see in this world. Don't get down and dirty with the evil ones. Be the example of godliness in our world. I hope this gave you food for thought. And please go to my website, lorimichelle.net. I'm available for private meetings, and continue to listen and learn with me. Because if we learn how to get it right and we go inward and remove the problems from ourselves, we have a shot at healing our world. God bless you, and may there be peace in our world, in our time. God bless you.